Hey everybody, how you doing today? My name's Cody, and I'm here to talk to you about Brawl Meta Knight, the best character in the game. Very exciting stuff. So this is an info dump. I'm later going to have a video review session, and it's probably going to be on Twitch. So these slides are going to be like study materials for that video review session. So we'll have more to talk about. Okay, so for the fundamentals, this character thrives on having patience. So if your opponent is attacking you a lot, like dashing in, then you want to bait their attack out first, so you know you have time to hit. If if you're not sure if an attack is going to hit, or if you're not sure if it's going to be safe on block, don't do it. You wanna always attack at times where you know it's safe. Um, and in terms of tech skill, one thing I recommend to everyone is setting tap jump to off, and there are many reasons for this. One is off stage when you're trying to recover with up B, it's a lot more precise to have tap jump off. If you have it on, then you might end up accidentally missing the ledge because you might accidentally jump and you might get too much height. So definitely having tap jump off also helps with reverse up B out of shield, because then you could set L to jump, for example, like I do, and I think it's a lot more precise. You won't get any accidental jumps with having tap jump off. Um, so you have more control over your character that way. Also for gliding, there's some techs in here that I list, including the glide dip tech. This is something that's actually pretty new to me at least. I just learned it a year ago. So I'll talk about it later, but it's basically a tech that lets you do a little fall slightly before your glide starts. And this is helpful for getting below your opponent. As Meta Knight, you always want to be below your opponent whenever possible. So that extra, distance going down is going to put you in a better position. It'll also help you avoid getting glide attacked in the ditto. So there are many uses for this. I'm going to talk about it later. And then power shielding Nair right here. So this is something that it might be hard to practice on your own, but unless you have like a partner to practice with, you can practice it offline. But you can practice it on NetPlay or something. If you have a practice partner in person, then yeah, obviously do it offline. The down B warp is also an important tech to practice. So for this, you're going to want to just hold down B or activate down B, then let go, and then input a direction with the joystick, and then grab ledge with that. And it's helpful for a few things. When you're on stage and like high up in the air, you can use the down B warp to avoid getting juggled, but you only want to do that as a mix up, because it is vulnerable. When you warp to the ground, you are vulnerable for a second. So you really want to use it as like a mix up. Okay, so the next slide. Equipment is actually very important. A lot of people don't realize how much of a difference this stuff makes, so I did want to make a mention of it. So, for example, I was playing Fern for many years, and this guy was like, "Oh, my inputs are getting messed up. What's going on?" And we were like, "We don't know what could possibly be going on." But then eventually he said, he's using a Mayflash adapter, and he was also using a 60 hertz monitor. And these things are really, really bad, because the Mayflash in particular is the worst possible adapter you can use. All the other adapter options are better. The input integrity, the GC Pocket, the Wii U adapter, the Ultimate adapter, all of them are substantially better than the Mayflash. So if you have a Mayflash, I strongly recommend just getting rid of it, getting a new one altogether, because this adapter not only has horrible input lag, it also messes up your input consistency, and it might even throw out some of your inputs entirely. So it's severe about how many problems it causes. And then the monitor is another major thing. Like having a 120 hertz monitor or higher is really, really important. So I've had a lot of people who, after playing on 60 hertz monitors, went to a 120 or a 240 and said, "Wow, this does make a big difference." And it's only like, depending on obviously the specs of your monitor, but it could make a big difference up to like a frame or something, or even more than that. So it can help with tech skill, especially as Meta Knight when you're putting out so many hitboxes. Having that extra frame is really important. And then finally, I want to mention that there are mods for the controllers, like the domeless trigger mods, and there are like fob controllers that you can look into. I will provide some links for these servers in my server. So for example, the FOB server, you can check in my channels for that, like the ideas channel. I'm going to put it in there. And then there's the input integrity server as well. So mindset, we should always be confident that we're going to eventually win the match, because obviously Meta Knight is the best character in the game. For the most part, you're going to be dealing with advantageous matchups. The only time where you might not have an advantage, obviously, is the Ditto. And some people think that Ice Climbers are even. I think that you still beat Ice Climbers anyway. So you're always going to be in a winning matchup. There's no reason to doubt that you can eventually win the match. So even if you're like 1 stock to their 3, just don't worry. You just play calm, play patient. Eventually, you'll be able to bring it back. During a tournament, if you're in loser's bracket, there's actually a benefit to doing that, because you're going to get more play time. If you go through loser's bracket, you might have as many as twice as many matches, and you have more warm up before the grand finals. So instead of having to sit there for 10 to 20 minutes or something, if you went through the winner's bracket, if you're coming fresh from losers finals, then you're more warmed up and ready to go for grand finals. So there are benefits to that. And I want to say, in terms of composure, one example is Otori in the Piosuma 6 tournament. So he lost winners finals to Rain, but eventually he made a comeback in losers. He beat Sakasaka, he beat a bunch of players, and he was able to win the grand finals. And even though it wasn't looking good in winners finals, it was a lot better for Otori in the grand finals, and he really won quite decisively. So he kept his composure. He said, okay, well, I have to make some adjustments to what I'm doing. You may call that like a download or something, or just adaptation, but maybe the other player got fatigued. But whatever the reason is, Otori was able to make the comeback in grand finals because he kept his confidence, and that's why this is so key. Okay, so with option selection, what you're going to want to do is output safe hitboxes wherever possible, especially if you're not sure what the opponent's going to do. Then you want to pick moves accordingly to the probability of getting punished. So for example, if you're fighting an Olimar and you're not sure what they're going to do, don't use tilts. Don't walk up and down smash, because there's a million things that could go wrong with this. They could forward smash it. They could shield grab the down smash. With tilts, they could power shield the tilt and then you smash it out of shield. So you want to output more space tornadoes against an Olimar, for example, if you're not sure what they're going to do. Otherwise, if you're sure they're just going to like sit and shield, then yeah, you can grab them. You can set up for a juggle. But again, rushing in with the grab is itself a risk, because again, they could do the standard pivot grab. They could F smash it, U smash it. There's a million things they could do to beat that out. So especially like depending on the matchup, you want to know which moves are the safest, which moves have the highest risk reward. So like versus Snake, NATOs are pretty good. Like forward tilts versus Snake are kind of risky. Especially when the Snake whiffs a move, you're going to want to move in with like a neutral air or an up B. Using tilt on Snake is vulnerable to SDI. They can SDI it and punish you. They can also set you up with explosives, so you're going to want to NATO them in such a way that their grenade falls off and doesn't blow you up. So you really have to know the matchups and then pick your options accordingly. You can't use the same options for every matchup. And this is a huge problem that I'm seeing with a lot of new players, where they know the tech skill, they know what to do in terms of like the buttons and the inputs, but they don't know which options are best for different situations. And you can't approach the Wolf matchup or the Peach matchup in the same way as you approach the Zero Suit matchup. They're totally different. So down here at the bottom of the slide, I give an example of sometimes a player will always pick the same attack when the opponent is approaching the player's shield from behind. So for example, if you're Meta Knight and someone comes up behind you, the Meta Knight might like just drop shield and F tilt, but that's like obvious. Or the Meta Knight might drop shield and down smash. These are a lot of bad habits that a lot of people have, where they kind of default to these grounded attacks where they could do anything. They could drop shield and then turn around and grab, or they can reverse up B out of shield. that stuff is a bit safer because then, especially if you tilt someone's shield in close combat, pretty much every character has an answer. So like if you hit F tilt 3 on block and they're in position to punish you, they could kill you for it if you're at high percent. Especially like if you do an F tilt 3 on Marth, they can up B you. If you do an F tilt 3 on Olimar, they can up smash you and kill you. So you have to be very careful with tilts. You can utilize more walking. Walking is a lot better than dashing because then you have more control over what your next option is. And again, Nair out of shield. A lot of people forget. Meta Knight Nair out of shield is amazing. You could mix it up with short hop Nair, or sometimes do a full hop Nair out of shield. That full hop Nair out of shield is good for like ice climbers if they're in a position where they're right on top of you or something like that. But even then, that's risky. So don't do that all the time. But yeah, Nair out of shield in almost all matchups is really good. Okay, so shielding and grabbing. I want to mention that you have to be careful not to sit and shield all day. A lot of people are just sitting and wearing their shield down. I don't want to mention names, but especially like if you're a character that has items and you're sitting in shield a lot, well, that's time you're wasting that you could be outputting some items. You could be like, if you're Snake, you could be throwing grenades or setting up explosives. If you're just sitting in shield, then you're vulnerable to getting grabbed. You're vulnerable to getting shield poked, especially if you're fighting a Meta Knight. Then from the Meta Knight's perspective, you want to wear down their shield. As the Meta Knight player, you don't want to wear your shield down either, because then you could be pressuring them in that time. So you can be doing grounded up Bs, you could be doing a tornado. One trick I recommend is if you're a Meta Knight player and you notice your shield is getting low, then you can use tornado as like a time waster during which you can regenerate your shield. So if you say, oh, my shield's really low and I'm fighting a Peach or something, Peach doesn't really have anything strong and consistent to counter NATO with besides like avoiding it and nairing it. But that's kind of hit or miss. So, and if you're in a situation like that and you notice your shield is low, then you just NATO the Peach, and even if they shield it, you can just retreat to a platform. But either way, you escaped a trouble situation and you regenerated your shield at the same time. So you kind of accomplished two things there. And then I talk about different conditioning tools. So if you notice your opponent is waiting for your spot dodge, then what you do is you can grab them first or up B them first. Or if you can wait until they try and grab you, and then your up B will go through their grab. If you see they're dashing infrequently, this is another one where there's a million things you could do. You could stand and grab to beat out their dash grab. You can use fair, neutral air, or tilts in a time-sensitive manner. So you have to be really careful about the timing of your punish option. But if you are good with the timing and you're confident about when they're going to dash in exactly, then yes, you can do a short hop forward air. You can even get a sweet spot in air. If you're very on point with that timing, then you can get like 20% or something. It's pretty awesome. And finally, if they're doing a walking up and standing grab a lot, then you can just counter that with the normal, tilts or grab them first. Or forward roll behind them right before they grab and then punish their whiff. So that's the best really move to do, because then forward roll is really lagless. And then once they whiff, you can punish with a grounded up B. You can punish with a down tilt, for example. And again, F tilts are vulnerable to SDI, but at certain percentages that might be acceptable to do. All right, NATO usage. So like I said, you could do this trick with NATOing to escape trouble, even if you think they're going to block it. And that's really a strategy that's appropriate for mid tiers. I wouldn't suggest doing that all the time versus like a Marth, for example, because Marth has counter, he has up B, he can even F smash the NATO. So it's kind of risky to do it versus a character like Marth. Also, probably versus like Snake, because he can blow up the NATO or you tilt it. But like mid tiers don't really have consistent tools to beat NATO. The only thing Wolf has, for example, is the down B and the laser. That's pretty much it. Toon Link has bombs. Wario can kind of avoid the NATO, but his ability to punish NATO is very limited. Like he might be able to punish like 1 out of every 5 NATOs or something. So you're better off with using NATO versus Wario as opposed to like just never using it at all. The biggest thing that I recommend with NATO is when you know someone's going to land on a platform, always try and get them with that. So landing on platforms here, I'm highlighting it. So, like for example, if you see that they're up in the air and they're about to land on a platform, like on Battlefield or something, even on Smashville, um, try and catch them as they land with the NATO, because then you can hover the NATO right like at the height of the platform, but not above it. So it's very awkward for them to punish. The only character who can kind of punish that is Diddy Kong, because he could do like a buffered shield drop U-air or something, but that's not consistent. That's kind of like that's not going to work consistently. That might only work with a power shield too. It's very unlikely to work consistently. And then obviously in the Ditto, it works in the Ditto too, but the Meta Knight, the opposite Meta Knight might be able to ground it up B you and hit you. So NATO is a safe form of pressure, and you have to use it wisely. So the time it's vulnerable, as I mentioned here, is during startup. Anybody can hit it during startup. ZSS can dash attack it. Sonic can like run up and forward air it. Wolf can back air it or do anything to it. Dacus it. So the number one thing to be careful of with NATO is the startup, especially like with Olimar, because he has a fast up air. So if you use a NATO that's too high up, then Olimar might be able to up air it, and that's pretty much the best way he can punish it. And I'm going to show some videos in a minute about the spacing. So you have to be prepared for the opponent once you start the NATO, and then you have to be able to troubleshoot it. So the things they could do are they could roll, power shield, or they could just stare at you sassily while you're doing it, and then up B you at the last second. So that's like a trick. They might bait you into thinking, oh, I'm going to approach them because they're not prepared for this. But then they actually are prepared for it, because they're holding the power shield until when they finally have to at the last second. And Marth in particular can counter it, so he doesn't really need a strong reaction. Like even if he does counter like a little bit early, it's kind of easy for Marth to counter NATO. Ike's counter isn't as good, but it's still an option, I suppose. So you want to activate the NATO from safe positions, and I'm going to show a picture in a second. So tapping B with the correct rhythm is very important, because if you're too high when you're ending the NATO, you're going to end up in free fall, and if you're too low when you end the NATO, then you're going to have some end lag. But there's a certain height you want to land at, which is the approximately like full hop height, and if you land from there, then you'll be able to immediately act upon landing. So here on the left, we have a proper NATO, or something resembling a proper NATO, where the Diddy Kong is near the edge of the stage. Meta Knight is like kind of right at the height of the platform doing the NATO. And what happens here on the left is if the Diddy Kong shields it, then you can just retreat to platform. Or you could, retreat away or whatever. So you have mix-ups options. So he has to think, well, are you going to retreat to the platform? Are you going to retreat to the opposite side of stage? He kind of has to guess on that. So that's why this is better, because you have the platform. But over here on the right, you have no platform. Your NATO is way too high. You can see there's greater distance. So here to here is greater distance than from here to here. So you want to make sure that you're minimizing the distance between where your NATO starting is and where your opponent is. And there are limits to this. If you don't want to start a NATO right next to them, like on the ground, the only time you want to do a grounded NATO is versus Mr. Game & Watch. Because Mr. Game & Watch has these the U-air, he has the up B, and that could cause you to get stuck in free fall. And that could be death if he does that. So like here on the right picture, there's a million problems with this. One is it's too high for the lagless landing. So if you end the NATO up here, then you're gonna end up in free fall. So he has more time to punish you. He also has more time to react. Like even if you approach the Diddy Kong from this NATO, he's gonna have more time to react to it. All right. And then the next slide is, so this position is, it's okay. I call it suboptimal because your startup height is okay. Like by the time you finish it, you might have the lagless landing height. But the problem is if the Diddy Kong is like over here to the right and you're over here, then you have some distance in between you horizontally, and that'll give him more time to react. So the only way this would work is if he attempts a move like a forward air, or he rolls forward, or he does like some kind of F tilt but times it badly, so your NATO just runs into it and sucks it up. So you want to, I mean, you can do this, but it has to be a read. If you're going to do it from this position, you want it to be a read. So you're going to say, okay, he's going to dash attack, then it'll work. Or if he's going to roll into it, then that'll work too. More notes on NATO. So as I was saying earlier, you don't want to NATO every character the same way. With Marth, he has the counter tool, which is very effective. He also has the power shield up B, which is more of a death sentence if he does it, especially if he's edge guarding you as a Meta Knight player and Marth is at the ledge. Then he's going to know, okay, what's the Meta Knight going to do? He's probably going to attempt a NATO back on stage because that's like a common strategy. Because it's so telegraphed, the Marth will have a better sense of the timing to power shield up B it, so that's why you have to be extra careful when recovering against a Marth. And the ZSS, again, if you try to NATO from the ledge against ZSS, they're going to down smash it or side B it. So that is definitely risky. You want to look out for that. Falco can laser it. Olimar can like U-smash the startup of NATO. He can U-air the startup of NATO. And he can also neutral air a NATO from above. So you don't want to be NATOing below Olimar unless you think he's going to land on a platform. And that would be fine. But if it's just like a free-falling Olimar in the air and there's no platform, don't do a NATO, because then he can just neutral air it on reaction. He could also drift away from it and then throw a Pikmin at your end lag, or you could drift away from it and then do an aerial to hit your end lag. So, but yeah, versus fatties like DDD, DK, and Sonic, NATO is pretty safe. Especially DDD, like you can just NATO DDD all day. That's why the matchup's so bad. Yep, and then Falco can laser your NATOs. But the thing is, with NATO, this is huge. The bottom sentence here, if you're trying to get Falco when he recovers from off stage, you can time your NATO so you can suck him up like 90% of the time. The problem is, though, it's somewhat of a guessing game. Like the Falco can react to your position, and if he has to, he can side B to the ledge, or he could wait to side B until after your NATO is done. So it's somewhat of a precise timing issue. So these are some of the ATs that you should practice. One is the glide dip, or GDT, as I like to call it. And Otori here describes how to do it, and he says, when facing right near the apex of your double jump, move the 3D stick, which is the left stick, the analog stick, to 4, 1, 2, 3, 6 on the numeric keypad to do this. And what he means by that is you make a U shape. So what you're just making a U shape with the left stick or the joystick at the height of your double jump. And that is, so you're going to be doing a U shape in the opposite direction that you're facing. So if you're facing right, then you want to do it from left to right. So you're starting on the left and you're ending on the right. And then if you're facing left, then you make the U from right to left. So you're starting in the opposite direction that you're facing on the joystick. And the reason we do this is, again, to get below your opponent. As a Meta Knight, you always want to be below your opponent whenever possible, because then you can U-air, you could throw out these repeated U-airs, you could do an up B or a NATO. Basically, Meta Knight is all about optimizing your attack angles. That could be the sum up of this entire video, is like optimize your attack angles. Especially with NATO and shield pokes, you always want to attack from below your opponent. If the opponent is on a platform, you want to be NATOing them slightly below the platform, like right kind of at the height of the platform, but it's still below your opponent. That's why it's so awkward for them to punish it, and it might shield poke them. And same thing with glide attack. If you glide attack them at the ledge using this glide dip tech, because you can get below the ledge when you ledge drop, double jump, and then glide dip, then you can do a safe glide attack. And that might shield poke them too. It might even kill them. If they whiff an attack, if it's a Marth, for example, and they whiff an F smash, you can kill them for a whiff using this glide attack. So, more ATs. So I talked about the lagless NATO landing. I'm going to show a video of that soon so you can see and you have a visual on what it's supposed to look like. It's around full hop height. And then the objective is to be immediately actionable upon landing. And you can do this with glide as well. So if you do a grounded up B, you can, after your glide, your initial up B is done, you're going to be in glide. Then you just press B again and fast fall. And then if you do it correctly, then you'll be immediately actionable upon landing. And in fact, I'm going to show some demonstrations of it. You can buffer F tilts after this. You can buffer a D tilt or a roll. You can do anything you want. Anything to your heart's desire. So hovering your ledge without grabbing it, that can be useful. It's a mix-up. It's just kind of a thing to confuse your opponent. Like, oh, they thought you're going to grab ledge and they're going to have another second to reorient themselves. But no, actually, you're just hovering your ledge to confuse them, and then you're going to try to get on stage and attack them, like with a grab or a tilt or something. So it's just a mix-up. And then down B to grab ledge, like I mentioned before, you want to practice this because this is very important. You can do the down B warp from awkward angles, like above and to the right of the ledge, but normally you really want to do this below and to the right. So down B to grab ledge from below and to the right, because if you do it above and to the right, it's, first of all, it's a bit awkward to input it and grab the ledge properly. You're at a higher risk of free falling to your death. It's basically the equivalent of in Melee doing a ledge dash and missing it. Like you're gonna fall to your death. And in this case, the risk reward isn't even that great, because it's like, why do you need to warp to the ledge from above and to the right off stage when you could just wait and fall and then clear the ledge with up airs or something, wait until their iframes are over, clear the ledge, and then grab it. Or just up B to it once their iframes are over. Either one. It's like both of those things make more sense and use up more time, which favors you as the Meta Knight player. Grounded up B cancel. I described this earlier. What you want to do is you just you do the grounded up B, and then you hit B again to cancel the glide, and then you have to fast fall immediately. And if you do it right, then you can have any action upon landing. Usually you want to do like a roll or a D tilt or something. Or you could do a neutral air, whatever. These are the less essential ATs, but they're still, helpful. I call them level 2 because they're a bit more difficult. So there's a guide on buffering in Brawl, and I recommend that everybody check this guide out. It's on Smashboards. I believe I have a link in my server. If I don't have it already, then I will put it there. Just ask me about it, and I will provide it upon request. So buffering in F tilt, you want to input F tilt 1 and return the stick to neutral before you would normally see yourself as actionable. You can see whether you did this correctly with F tilt. That's why I recommend working on buffering with F tilt as Meta Knight, because then you can see if you did it correctly. Because even though you only put one F tilt in, the character will actually do F tilt 1 and 2. So you know it's buffered because you only put in 1 and you got 2. And then if to do a third F tilt, you press C stick to the side after the first 2 come out. And then buffering dashes is a bit more confusing. Like you have to do a flick of the joystick well, in the end lag of your last move, and then return stick to neutral. So again, this is somewhat difficult. I don't really buffer dashes a lot anyway, because it kind of forces you to commit to the move and gives you less of a reaction time. Buffering in general is it can be helpful in some cases, but don't just spam buffer moves without thinking about if the move even makes sense. Like if you're not sure where the opponent will be in a second, you don't have to buffer the move, because then you might be wasting a hitbox and you might get yourself actually punished from committing to this hitbox before you even know where the opponent will be. So it's just something to have in your arsenal, but not necessarily something to rely on. And then again, this last thing down here, the gliding past ledge, that's again a flashy tech. It's not really that useful, but it's cute to know. You just hold down and back on the joystick. I'm not too familiar with this myself. I just vaguely know about it. Okay, next. So in this video, you can see there are going to be some grounded up Bs and other tech skill that you can use as a comparison for your practice. So you got there some grounded up Bs and then fast fall, and then I did a buffer F tilt right there, showing that I was actionable. So this is a roll to buffer F tilt, air dodge to buffer F tilt. And then yeah, right there, like below the edge and to the right is where you want to do the warp. So on the left edge you want to be going to the left. So yeah, I'm showing off some like roll to buffer down smash, roll to buffer D tilt, air dodge to buffer F tilt. The platform cancel is useful for ice climbers, other matchups as well, sometimes versus Snake. And there was the dip, so what I did there was I dipped slightly before the glide started, and that again put me in a better position to safely glide attack the ledge. Now with the up Bs onto the edge, watch for a flash, because if you do a glide attack right before you land with the reverse up B onto the edge, you can actually see a flash and then you'll be actionable. So there's two ways to do the up B back on stage. One is just to do it normally like this, and you can also do a glide attack cancel. Notice here how I'm not fast falling. Yeah, well, that time was a fast fall, but yeah, I was showcasing here like the difference between fast falling through the platform after landing on it and not fast falling. So you really want to be careful about which one you choose. And you hold the stick down and then let go after you fall through the platform to do a non-fast fall. And if you want to do the fast fall, then you would let go of the down on the joystick and then immediately push down when you land on the platform. It's a little confusing, but you can get it. So here I'm just showcasing some like ledge play, reverse up B, yeah, glide attack to buffer F tilt. It's another good one for like a mix up. And then this next slide. So this is the lagless landing. Lagless landing to roll. There it's the shield because your opponent might be attacking you. So I'm pretending like there's an opponent going in to attack me, but I shielded it. So I might have been able to like punish the opponent. That time I did a buffer F tilt after the NATO, which is another precise thing. It's a good mix up. You can NATO to spot dodge afterwards after you land, but notice how I'm landing in approximately from the height of the platform. And right there you saw a flash. That's what I meant by like canceling the glide attack after an up B. Okay, so we're getting to the end of this presentation here. Thank you for watching. So how to study tourney matches proactively. So watch with no distractions. You get more out of it when you're paying attention. Think, would I have done something different in this situation? Like if the player in question that you're watching chose like a grounded up B, or something, and then they were facing a Marth, and the Marth power shielded it and then up aired them for it. See, that would be a, it would not have worked out for them. But if you chose something different, like if you grabbed the Marth player, or if you maybe rolled behind the Marth player and then dash grabbed them from behind, or detilted them at a spaced distance, maybe that might have worked out better. So just keep thinking about the timings and spacings of the moves you're seeing. And one example I give here is again about Olimar, because it is a common matchup, and there's DeBuzz playing, and I use Olimar, so it's helpful to know how to fight Olimar. You watch how these players abuse really how when Olimar's shield gets low, the tornado can poke it. Especially if Olimar's on a platform, then that's ripe for a shield poke. And another matchup example is Nairo edgeguarding ZSS, and this one is another important one because I mean, you never know. Maybe one day V115 or Salem will play again. Probably not, but you never know. And sometimes I use CSS, so just visualize where the opponent will double jump, and if they use the double jump with their up B, can increase their double jump height. So be aware of that as well. Always picture like a vertical line above where the ZSS is, and that's the zone of danger for their up B. So you really have to be thinking of this geometrically. Think of ZSS in a vertical line of danger representing the tether. And definitely stay out of that zone whenever possible. And if you have iframes, then you can actually punish it by naring it or down airing it, up being it, or whatever. Like Nairo does this a lot. If you watch his videos, you'll see how he punishes Zero Suit. So yes, for the next study session, like I said, this is probably going to be something that I do on Twitch, perhaps, or it might be YouTube, who knows. And these are some potential matches that we might go over. So these are like standard matchups. These are a lot of high tier relevant characters, meta relevant characters like Olimar, Pikachu. Let's see what else. Ice Climbers. There's Rain versus Vinny. That's Ice Climbers. Rain versus Mikaneko. That's Marth. And Maikai's versus Tyrant. That's Marth versus Meta Knight. And then Sakasaka versus Otori. This is the one I would recommend because that one I'm definitely going to talk about in the next session. Because there's a lot to analyze in that one, so that's good. Keep you thinking while you're watching it. So definitely maybe take a look at some of these videos. And any other matchups that I'll come back to that in a minute. So yeah, any matchups that you're struggling with, take note of it, because then we can go over it in the review session. So for example, if you struggle with like, Wolf or something, then sure, we'll go over a Wolf versus Meta Knight video, and then we'll give you some ideas on how to deal with that. If you're struggling with perhaps a Wario, then yeah, there's plenty of Wario videos to go over. We could do that too. So we're gonna definitely make the most out of the time we have, and I want everyone to definitely get something out of it in terms of like maybe new ideas, new concepts, also new techniques. So if they didn't think about conditioning versus like a Wario, for example, ways to condition versus Wario, or whatever matchup you're having trouble with, then I'll talk about that in the next session. So I would very much like it if you guys took note of whichever your most trouble matchups are, and then we could work on them. So for Pikachu, for example, some good videos are Eastham versus Tyrant or versus Anti, and then some ZSS videos, like I mentioned before, Nairo versus Salem or Nairo versus V115. And don't worry too much about low tiers. Like if you're a Meta Knight player and you're thinking, oh, I don't know the Lucas matchup. No one knows the Lucas matchup. All you do is you grab it. You can re-grab them. Like, for example, a lot of low tiers are vulnerable to like NATO spam. They're vulnerable to grab spam. There's just a million ways you can do it, and you can figure that out while you're playing them. You don't have to like study the Lucas matchup or the Samus matchup ahead of time. If you run into a Samus, then you can kind of figure it out as you play it, because that's like the enormous matchup gap between you and these characters. So focus your energy on like the meta relevant characters, like Ice Climbers, Falco, Pikachu. If you feel like you want to study the Peach matchup, I mean, sure. I could probably find some Peach matchup videos too. So yeah, we'll talk about anything you want to talk about. And then for the last one, so for the input integrity adapter, I just wanted to mention that this adapter is definitely better than all the others, as well as the GC Pocket. I just kind of threw this in at the end because I didn't want to take up too much time at the beginning of the presentation. But I do want to remind everyone that like there's quite the data to support this. Like if you look at the bottom here, this Mayflash line is just horrible. And then with the max adapter overclock, it's still bad. Basically, you really want to get the input integrity or the GC Pocket. And if you have like a Wii U or an Ultimate adapter already, then they're fine. Just be sure to overclock it, because then the difference between the II or the GC Pocket is very small, like over here. But without the overclocking, the difference is more stark, which is just what you're going to see right here with the no overclocking. Yep, that's something to think about. Definitely something to research. And thanks everyone for watching this presentation. And I hope to see you all in the study session.